China has its sights on becoming an educational powerhouse by building world-class universities and opening its doors to more international students. Hello everyone, I'm Asiye Namdar and you're watching The Heat. China's higher education has made remarkable progress over the last 75 years, with many of its universities today ranked among the best in the world. Beijing has made education a high priority and wants to turn China into a leading country in education by 2035. As China makes progress as a hub for education and innovation, it is also attracting more international students from Africa, Iran, and other parts of the world. For more on China's success in higher education, let's bring in our guest. Joining us from Kunshan, John Quelch is Executive Vice Chancellor at Kunshan University, and Victor Gao is a chair professor with Soochow University in Beijing. Victor, let me start with you. As I mentioned, China has made tremendous achievements, progress, advancements, if you will, when it comes to education. President Xi Jinping even made it part of his New Year's address. I'm paraphrasing here, basically saying every family hopes that their children can have good education with more and more opportunities. How did China manage to accomplish this?
Thank you very much for having me. First of all, putting great emphasis on education has been a dominant part of the Chinese culture and civilization for thousands of years. Then, ever since 1949, the Chinese government has really emphasized on the importance of education, especially of science and technological breakthroughs, for example, in support of the national economy. And by now, Chinese education has the largest scale in terms of the universities, the number of the students enrolled in the college system, and also the way that the different kinds of disciplines are lined up to support the national economic development. And every year, we normally say we graduate about 10 million Chinese students from colleges of all kinds, and about a quarter of them graduate with engineering degrees. That means the emphasis by the government, the participation of the Chinese nation, and every family puts a premium on the importance of education for their kids, all combined together to make sure that China is a society always emphasizing on the importance of education. And then the government comes up with funding and support. And in more recent years, there are more and more wealthy individuals who made their fortunes elsewhere, but they want to contribute with their own money to education. So I think right now, in terms of the funding, we have the government funding on the one hand, but also hopefully increasing amounts of private contributions. And this will make the Chinese education more sustainable in the longer term. Further, there are increasing number of foreign universities participating in Chinese higher education. And I think this brings new perspectives, new angles to the Chinese educational system. And I think all of us benefit from that. I had the privilege of attending college here in China, attending a graduate program in Beijing, but also I spent 4 years at Yale University and Yale Law School. So I personally have the benefit of looking at Chinese educational system, comparing that with that in the United States and elsewhere in the world. And I would say, let's really work very hard to make sure that the Chinese educational system is one of the most successful educational systems in the world.
And you know, someone who is doing just that, playing a very critical role, is John Quelch. John, you've had leading roles in top academic institutions in 3 continents. Talk about this unique partnership between Duke University and Wuhan University, which has basically brought us Duke Kunshan University, if you will. So talk about this collaboration.
So we are an 11-year-old international joint venture university. I want to underscore that the Kunshan municipal government is a very important co-partner along with Duke and Wuhan in this joint effort. And one of the things that Victor mentioned that's very important here is the willingness of the Chinese higher education system to embrace international collaborations. We are not the only international joint venture university by any means, but perhaps one of the more prominent. And the Chinese Ministry of Education is thereby giving choice to Chinese parents and to Chinese students by offering an alternative to the traditional and, as Victor said, increasingly competent and world-renowned public university system. We are in a position at the moment where we are attracting, I think, 20 applicants for every freshman place at Duke Kunshan University, and that, I think, reflects the fact that we are offering something a little bit different from the standard Chinese public university. We put a lot of emphasis on interdisciplinarity, on self-discovery, and we do not use the Gaokao score exclusively as the sole criterion on which we make our admission decisions. So we really appreciate the opportunity to be in the world's second largest economy, with Duke University now ranked number 6 in the United States, and Wuhan University has proved to be a very important and effective contributor to the overall success of our joint venture. And thank you for inviting me.
Of course, our pleasure. And Victor, you mentioned something I want to pick up on. You talked about China's economic development. Really, the more educated people are, the more it helps economic growth. Talk a little bit about the link. After all, as John mentioned, China is the second biggest economy in the world.
Absolutely, yes, indeed. China is the second largest economy if we use official exchange rate. And China is already the largest economy if we use purchasing power parity, as normally the World Bank or the IMF and many other international organizations tend to do. And you definitely remember that back in 1978, when China started the economic reform, political reform, and opening to the outside world, China emphasized achieving modernizations in 4 areas: agriculture, industry, and science and technology, as well as national defense. And education was considered from the very beginning as a pillar for all these efforts to achieve modernization. And by today, China is talking about new qualitative productivity, which basically means breakthroughs in science and technology and empowering people, enabling people to better contribute to the productivity and efficiency of all kinds. This requires the people at large to be well trained. And by now, I remember the admission rate for Gaokao, the national entrance examination, is up to about 70 to 75%. Basically meaning if you are a high school graduate, as a rule of thumb, if you just try to enter into a college of different kinds of course, you may be admitted. And I think this general high rate of college admission, plus other 3-year colleges or vocational schools of all kinds, basically provided the pillar for the Chinese younger generation to be educated, mostly for whatever they desire and according to their own personal wishes. And I think this basically enabled the whole Chinese population to be highly educated and well trained, and each probably will be in a position to find a job for him or herself when China itself is completely and dramatically transforming its national economy. Especially, for example, we are moving into the AI age, and the population need to be almost, I would say, completely revamped in terms of their knowledge base, skill sets, for example, as well as their continued education for the rest of their life. And I think this demonstrates the vitality and the sustainability of the Chinese higher educational system.
John, when you speak to students at Duke, Kunshan University, or DKU, what do they tell you? I'm talking about the international students who've chosen to take part in this program. What do they see as the big attraction, as the big draw?
Approximately 30% of our undergraduates are international and 70% are Chinese. That's a target that we adhere to every year. The international students, the largest contingent is, I'm pleased to say, from the United States. We have a significant number of American students who are committed to a 4-year degree program at Duke Kunshan University. But beyond the United States, what I notice is a very important component of our student population from Belt and Road countries. We are not necessarily overrepresenting European countries, for example, but much more diversity in terms of the global South is present in our international student mix. And what they are looking for is a understanding of China, which they realize is very important in many respects as a partner to the economic development of their home countries. They're also, I think, very interested in the opportunity to be in an English language university within China, which gives them really an opportunity to tap into 2 different cultural traditions. And then finally, I would say that the interdisciplinarity of our institution, the fact that you do not have to choose a major before you are in the first day of class. You have flexibility to explore. You can choose your major after a year or a year and a half. This is also an attraction to many young people who at the age of 17 or 18 may not know exactly what they are most fascinated by or interested in. So I think these are some of the reasons why we have such a high quality group of international students. Let me just mention one other thing, and that is that 85% of our graduating students, our undergraduates, go on to master's and PhD programs directly from Duke Kunshan University. We believe this is one of the highest percentage in the world of graduating students moving straight into graduate education. And many of these students are going to top US, UK, and other international schools, but also we send Schwartzman fellows to Tsinghua, we send Yenqing fellows to Peking University. The quality of our education provided by an international faculty from around 30 countries, the student population around 70 countries represented, but in terms of the faculty, 30 countries. We have an exceptional talented faculty pool who are committed to teaching as well as research. So all of these factors bear upon, I think, not just the international students lining up to be part of our institution, but also the Chinese students as well.
And Victor, do you believe job growth and progress, extraordinary progress in China's education system, will that ultimately mean more job opportunities for young people?
Absolutely. I think in China today, if you do not have a college degree or a master or PhD degree, most of the doors in urban cities probably will be closed. And I think you do need to finish college or go on to further education to be better trained, better qualified in order to pick up more meaningful, higher paying jobs. That is increasingly a rule. Further, I would say, the transformation of the Chinese economy in itself, moving more and more to scientific focus, technological focus, creativity, innovation of all kinds, demand that the people will be highly educated. And I think in terms of the different subject matters, disciplines offered by the Chinese universities, I understand there has been a higher degree of reshuffling in order to better suit the new challenges, mainly because of the rapid transformation of the Chinese economy in itself, profound transformation. And I think this means that the Chinese educational system has been more dynamic in terms of admitting more people, but also in readjusting and readapting the disciplines, the subject matters that they offer the students to be trained in, and also, I would say, a higher level of connectivity with the rest of the world, because we not only have great universities like the Kunshan, for example, but increasingly the faculty members in Chinese universities include Chinese students who have gone abroad to study, finished their PhD, coming back, for example, and sometimes more and more foreign faculty members have been hired. I personally benefited hugely from the one American professor and one professor from Britain when I was in my college years at the end of the 1970s. And I would say their contribution to the Chinese education and the upbringing of the Chinese students has been indispensable. And I hope in the coming years, more and more universities in China, we have more than 3,000 universities of all kinds, will have a higher degree of connectivity with the rest of the world, more international faculty members, more international students, and then more Chinese students going abroad. So this will really demonstrate that China is fully committed to this re-globalization rather than deglobalization in the coming decades.
All right, we'll leave it there. Victor Gao, John Quelch, thank you very much. More of our conversation right after this. Stay with us. You're watching The Heat.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
Welcome back to The Heat. We're discussing China's investment in higher education, efforts to build world-class universities, and the impact for future generations. Joining us now from Portland, Oregon is Liang. She's a chair professor of economics at Willamette University. Yan, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Clearly, there are big academic differences between the education system in China and the United States. Can you share with us what some of those key differences are?
Right. I think when it comes to the higher education system, as you just mentioned, there are a lot of differences. And if we zoom in on the curriculum, I think the Chinese curriculum is highly structured. So students typically already chose their major before they actually enter the universities. And of course, there are some flexibilities. They can change majors or whatnot, but most of the time, they would already know what they wanted to major in, and they start to already build up that kind of very specific knowledge in that specialized field. Whereas in the United States, I think students are more generally sort of going to the college and start with some of the general basis in terms of knowledge, especially in the liberal arts college where I teach. Students are typically required to take all kinds of classes from different disciplines. So that's very different. And I think the second when it comes to curriculum is that in China, a lot of undergraduate students are also doing research, especially in the applied field, which I think in the United States it's less so. It's mostly, some of the more meaningful research happens at the graduate level. So I think those are two really big, as far as curriculum, the differences are that kind of stand out to me. But otherwise, there are also many differences when it comes to admission procedures and standards, when it comes to assessments, and when it comes to student lives and so on and so forth. There are quite differences between the two countries' systems.
It's interesting you bring up the idea of students having to declare majors when they're younger in high school. A lot of Middle Eastern countries are the same way. I grew up in Iran, and I remember by your sophomore or junior year in high school, you had to declare a major, which my sister did. I was younger than her. But yeah, China is not the only country that does that. A lot of Middle Eastern countries also do that. And there's been this rise in interest in so many foreign students getting an education in China. What is behind that?
Right. Well, I think there are a number of reasons. One is, of course, China's economic rise has presented a different sort of model, a different way of, running the economy, running, the societies. And a lot of, China's rise is driven by technologies, by productivity. And therefore, I think the education system becomes more attractive, right? This is the idea that by getting a Chinese education, you get more prospects in the job markets and also knowing better, right, how to sort of run an economy in a different model. So I think that becomes very attractive, especially for developing countries. You see many students from Africa, from Pakistan, from a lot of the global South countries are coming to China to get education, to really have the insights in terms of science, technologies, and also just in general. And so I think that is one reason. And second is that I think the Chinese education system is still a lot more affordable. Also, of course, the living, standards, right? They are less costly than if you would wanted to pursue a degree, let's say, in the United States or in the United Kingdom. So I think that affordability is also a main concern. And third and lastly, I think, especially in recent years, China really opens the door and really welcome these foreign students to come to China. So, for example, last year in the FOCA, the China-Africa Cooperation Forum, President Xi has pledged to sponsor, 60,000 African students in the next 3 years to come to China to study and provide them with scholarships and stipend. Whereas when you look at the United States, the denial rate of, F1 visa to African students was 57% in 2023. So I think it shows a very different kinds of, positions, right, that China is really welcoming foreign students to come to China and have these kinds of academic exchanges and exchanges of cultures and ideas. And so I think that makes China's education system very attractive for foreign students.
And it's not just foreign students. More and more Chinese students are choosing Chinese universities over coming to the United States.
Right, and I think that reflects two major, reasons. One is that the Chinese education system is improving, by leaps and bounds. When you look at the rankings, many of the Chinese universities are now ranked very top in the global, sort of ranking, right? When you look at Peking University or Tsinghua or Zhejiang University or Fudan, they all ranked, close into the top 50 in the global, universities. So I think that improvements in the quality, right, in the Chinese education, higher education institutions is one of the main reasons that many students chose to stay in China and pursue, the graduate studies and so on and so forth. But I think also the recent geopolitical tension also play a role. I think, before the pandemic, there are about 370,000 Chinese students here in the United States enrolled in the higher education institutions, and now the number goes down to about 270,000. So I think, COVID plays a role, but also the kind of rising, I would say, hostility in some ways, in a way sort of preventing Chinese students.
And you bring up a good point. You mentioned geopolitical tensions, and we have U.S. President-elect Donald Trump going to take office in less than 2 weeks from now. Are you concerned that perhaps those critical international exchanges, the kind of investments that have been done in the past, that will come to a halt?
Yes, I do think, with all the, signs, right? Again, Trump is being as unpredictable as he is. It's hard to know exactly what he's going to do when it comes to, the kinds of academic exchanges. And of course, there has been a big debate about H-1B visas in the United States. And so that has some ramifications when it comes to, the kinds of educational exchanges. But nonetheless, I think, again, it will be in the great interest in both countries to foster the kind of academic and, cultural exchanges, people-to-people exchanges. I think students play a huge role, right, in connecting, both countries, and also to build a kind of knowledge, the foundation of understanding between the two countries. And I think that's very important in many different levels, right? From a strategic point of view, knowing each other is so important to avoid any miscalculations. And down to the economic level, I think the exchanges can really boost, the technological and scientific kind of exchanges and cooperation. And so that is a good thing for both countries. One thing that I do wanted to know, though, is that by the end of last year in December, the Science and Technology Agreement has been renewed for the next 5 years. And this is about, science and technological cooperation between the two countries' governments. But it's a watered down version because, some of these cooperations in the emerging and strategic industries like AI or semiconductors will be restricted. And it also doesn't say anything about cooperation between private enterprises and also, between universities. So unfortunately, I think, it remains to be seen, right, if any of these kinds of academic exchanges can be resumed and even, strengthened coming forward.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Liang, thank you very much. And that's all the time we have for this edition of The Heat. I'm Asiye Namdar. Thanks for watching.